Today we celebrate the memorial of Saint Bonaventure, who was a bishop and doctor of the church. He lived in the 13th century, so two exceptional minds and two exceptional theologians appeared in the 13th century. St. Thomas of Aquinas on the Dominican side, and St. Bonaventure on the Franciscan side. Perhaps it is an unfortunate time for St. Bonaventure to be born, because naturally St. Thomas of Aquinas overshadowed him. And he came in second place after St. Thomas of Aquinas. But St. Bonaventure is certainly an amazing figure on his own. And the church baptized him, gave him the title of Seraphic Doctor. It is told that when the Pope wanted to institute the feast day of the Corpus Christi, he called on the best two theologians of the time so that they could compose a Eucharistic hymn, Thomas of Aquinas and St. Bonaventure. He gave them a time for them to pray and compose the hymn, and then he called them back. And St. Bonaventure said, St. Thomas of Aquinas, you go first. So Thomas of Aquinas, he read the Pangelingua and the Tantum Ergo. And when Thomas of Aquinas was done, St. Bonaventure took out his composition and he tore it to pieces, because he knew there was no way he could do better than Thomas of Aquinas. St. Bonaventure became the superior of the Franciscans, and later he became a bishop and a cardinal. Today, in the office of reading of the church, we have an extract from the most emblematic work of St. Bonaventure. It's called the Itinerary of the Mind to God. And in that extract, there's a beautiful line worth commenting. Remember that St. Bonaventure, he was a great theologian, and he spent most of his time reading, reflecting, writing, discerning. But in his writing, in this extract, he says something especially insightful coming from a theologian. He says, if you really want to go to holiness, if you really want to convert your heart to God, he said, your operations of the mind must go to a second place, and your affections have to surrender completely to God. So as a theologian, he said, intelligence has a certain limit. What really matters for holiness is surrendering our will to God. And I thought, how can we apply this to our lives if we're not theologians? Because you and me, we're not reflecting and writing, and that's not our work. But I think there's a good application to our lives. Many times in our life, we face a difficult situation that we can't wrap our heads around it. Sometimes we are called to carry a cross, and we try to find explanations for it. There are certain situations in our lives that are hard to understand. And no matter how much we think about it, we only find frustration. In those situations, we have to give up the intelligence, and we have to be able to give our affections to God, and we have to be able to say, Lord, I want to do what you want, and I want what you do. Let me repeat that. I want to do what you want me to do, and I want to accept whatever you would want to do in my own life. So St. Bonaventure, although he was a great theologian, he reminds us of the primacy of the will over the intelligence. So if there's a certain situation in your life that you have difficulties understanding, let us call today on the intercession of St. Bonaventure, and let us tell him, show us to surrender our affections to God and to accept and do his will, even when our intelligence cannot fully understand it.